Hey everybody, so we're going to look at an argument today, and we're going to transition from just thinking our way through the argument and look more at the composition element, like how would you write your argument down effectively in perhaps like an essay format, okay? So we're going to use the same scenario we've been practicing with. A high school is considering canceling their driver's education program in order to offer more options for foreign language courses. And so here's the basic logic we've been working with. Those supporting the elimination of driver's education say that with the number of colleges that require 2 years of foreign language, students need more choices in which foreign language they can take. Those opposing the elimination of driver's education look more at kind of the impact that it would have on families, perhaps, the cost and time required to actually educate their children how to drive on their own time and their own dime. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use this sample claim that I wrote in the same format that we've been practicing, this closed format. And so while more, the sample claim we're using, while more options for foreign language would be a good opportunity for students, school board officials should not cancel the driver's education course because the negative impact on local families would be unfair. Okay? And so I want to point out a few things here. So I am qualifying my thesis. Okay? So this part right here at the beginning that I'm putting a blue highlight on, I'm allowing there to be possibility for objection to my idea, but I'm also sort of dismissing that as a major concern. I'm saying, yes, foreign language options, more choice, that's always going to be good for students, okay? And so I'm not arguing against choice for students. What I'm doing here is I'm advocating for fairness with local families. That's, to me, in this case, as we're practicing, the more important issue, okay? So while having more choice is nice, and I wouldn't disagree with the idea of having more options for foreign language, what's really important here is my value. In this case, the value I have is that the impact on local families would be unfair, okay? And so that's going to be the driving force in context for my argument. So all my examples and my reasoning need to come back to this idea of canceling the driver's education course would be unfair, and it would have an unfair negative impact on families, okay? And so that's what I'm going to try to focus my argument on. And so the method we're going to use, the full method is called WPAE. It's an acronym. I'm sure you have lots of those. It's similar to ACE, but what this does is it lets us kind of take it a little bit deeper. I find that ACE is something y'all probably learned in middle school or early high school for short answer response, and it's the answer, cite, explain model. I think that there's a little bit of lack in the explanation factor in terms of helping you understand what you're really supposed to do. And so WPAE kind of breaks it down a little bit more. This is a method that I found through the writing lab at UC Berkeley. And so I find it works really well. So the WP is the first part where you're introducing evidence. And so this all comes after a topic sentence. WP reminds writers to write quotes and to paraphrase. Okay, in this particular type of writing argument, you're not going to be quoting directly. Now, later on in the year, when we do analysis, or in a few weeks when we do synthesis, you will. And so we'll come back and look at this again. But for argument writing, you're not going to be quoting anything. Okay, all of your evidence is essentially going to come from your words. It's going to be paraphrased. And so you should be paraphrasing important details and context for your ideas. Okay, so here's the example to support our practice claim, our sample claim. Okay, eliminating driver's education would be unfair to working parents, even more so to single-parent households, as the hours required to complete driver's education are burdensome. Okay, so this paragraph is only going to look at how the time required is unfair. Okay, I recognize that I can make an argument about the cost. I'm going to make that in a separate body paragraph. Okay, so the way I'm building out my whole essay is I'll talk about the time element and I'll establish how that's unfair, and then I'll look at the cost element and I'll establish how that's unfair in another paragraph, okay, which isn't part of this example. We're just going to go over one, okay? So that's a topic sentence. The state of Texas requires learning drivers under age 17 to complete 32 hours of classroom training and 44 hours of practical training before they can even apply for a driver's permit. Okay? This is a specific example. This is a claim of fact. This is something that's verifiable, right? This is the law. This is what Texas requires. Okay? And so I'm presenting this information as an example, which I will later follow up in my paragraph here and analyze and evaluate to connect it back to my idea that canceling this course would be unfair. Okay? But right now, all I'm trying to do is paraphrase the important details that I'm going to need to use later. Okay? So I need some more context. While the hours required is rigid and non-negotiable, learning drivers have the option to complete these hours with a program at their school, a private program, or with a parent. Okay? And this is part of the law too. So the hours required is easy to see, and then they have options on how they can get those hours done. Right now, a lot of them get it done at school, but if this change is made, they'll only have a chance to probably do it with their parent, unless they have money, okay, which we'll discuss in the next paragraph, okay, the one where I talk about cost. So this is the W and the P, and so I'll do some more highlighting here to try to make it easy to see. The first part is topic sentence. So this first sentence here, I am paraphrasing the hours required, okay, which is important because I just said the time required, the number of hours required would be burdensome, okay? So my audience is naturally going to want to know how many hours are required, okay? And so here I got a little claim of fact that reveals that information, okay? I also want to put some stuff in context to build some ideas later, and so that's why I included this second sentence. Just because it requires a lot of time, there's also a very specific way that, or in this case, a couple choice ways that students can get those hours done, okay? And so someone who has no idea how driver's education works would need this information in order to understand my idea, okay? And so that's why I'm putting it there. That's what context is. It's the necessary information that my audience needs so that they can follow along my reasoning and my argument, okay? But I haven't actually argued anything yet. I've just presented some information, okay? But that's all the first part does, is you present information. It's not until you get to this second part, the A and the E, where you're going to do some actual arguing, okay? And so this is the other part of the method from UC Berkeley. It reminds writers to analyze and evaluate. And the difference between those two, analysis is where you explain the point within the context of the example that you've presented, okay? So in this case, I'll explain why this particular number of hours is burdensome, okay? And so the evaluation part is where you explain how that point connects to your overall claim in the thesis. And so the evaluation in this example is going to be where I'm going to talk about requiring burdensome hours and putting that on the parent, taking away the choice of having to do it at school, would be unfair, okay? Because that's the central idea, is that this whole change is, if it's carried out, it would be unfair, okay? And so this is examples continuing on from the part that we already initiated in the previous slide when we presented the example, okay? So this is all explanation. For a household where both parents must work, or in a situation where a household might only have a single parent, adding an extra 76 hours to the family routine and schedule per learning driver would likely be very challenging to accomplish, okay? Considering many working households and single-parent households might already be at a disadvantage, otherwise they wouldn't have to dedicate so much time to their jobs just to get by. These underprivileged families are specifically the ones that public systems like public school, for instance, are supposed to serve. Taking away a public service, specifically this driver's education course, would create an unfair burden on families who are already at a disadvantage. These households who already hold multiple jobs or may only have a single parent available would not likely have the time to complete the requirements for driver's education on their own. And so I'm going to go back here now and I'm going to mark the colors for where analysis and evaluation take place in this explanation. Okay, so I'll use green for the analysis and I'll use blue for the evaluation. Okay, so let's see, let me turn my highlighter to green here. So this is the part where I'm analyzing. Here, so in the analysis part, I'm establishing the idea that the number of hours required is going to be a burden. Okay? Parents who have to work a lot already have limited hours of time outside of their work. Okay? Single parent households, this problem, this complication is even more intense. Okay? And so, and also too, if you consider the fact that some households have multiple kids who might be of learning driver age, this just again compounds the burden that a parent having to do driver's ed at home would have to deal with in terms of how much time they had available and had to invest in it. Okay, and so towards the end here, I'm starting to transition back to my evaluation. It's public school systems, right? Public systems like school are the ones that are supposed to really offer and alleviate these kinds of burdens on parents. Okay? Parents who work need their kids to go to school, either private school or public school, during the day so that they can work at their jobs while someone else teaches their children all the lessons in life that otherwise, if their school didn't exist, would fall on the parent. Okay? And so for a public school to make a decision like this would unfairly put a burden on parents, right? If they don't offer driver's ed at school, then they either have to pay for a private program or they have to have the parent do it themselves. This paragraph focuses on the issue of making the parent do it, which is going to be a time issue, okay? And so that's where the evaluation comes in at the bottom. Taking away a public service, specifically driver's education course, would create an unfair burden on families who are already at a disadvantage. Okay? Those households who already hold multiple jobs or only have a single parent available would not likely have the time to complete the requirements for driver's education on their own. Because if they did, they wouldn't need the school to do it. Okay? And so when you see it all together, this is the whole paragraph from both slides that I just pasted together here. We're establishing the idea that eliminating driver's education would be unfair, okay, because that's the central claim. In this particular paragraph, we're saying it's unfair because the time required would be burdensome, okay? So first in the yellow, I have to set up my example where I am later going to come back and show that the time required is burdensome. So I have to show people how much time it would take, okay? And so the green part is where we establish that time is a burden, right? Single households, single-parent households, working family households aren't going to have time to do that, especially if there's more than one kid that needs to learn it, or any other various complications to it. And then finally, the blue part at the very end here is where I evaluate. I connect the example of time that we've brought up and analyzed back to our central claim that suggests that canceling this course would be unfair. Okay? And so this is all you have to do. It all starts with that original idea. You have an example, and then everything in the green and the blue is commentary. That's where you're building what we call a line of reasoning. I have all my little dots, my points, my details. I have to connect them, okay, to draw meaning. And so that's what all the sentences in the blue and green highlighted areas are designed to do. And if you're one of those students who kind of wonders like, well, how much commentary do I need to have versus explanation? I think looking at this color slide here could help you get that ratio down. You'll notice the commentary part, the A and the E, is more than half of the space. Okay, and that's a pretty good rule of thumb to keep. If you're trying to judge your body paragraphs and gauge for yourself, like, am I explaining enough? Okay, that's a pretty good rule of thumb. You want at least half your paragraph or a little more to be focused on the commentary, where you're explaining how and why, and you're connecting ideas together. Okay, so watch this again if you have questions. I know we had to kind of go fast, and we'll talk about it in class as well, and we'll keep practicing. But get this idea of WPAE down in your head as steps, right, to follow. Because if you can follow this step, your ideas will make sense, they'll flow logically, and your arguments will be that much stronger. Okay, thanks for watching.